because I get excited because I'm absolutely 100% positive that if I can do this, that literally anyone can. You could have never convinced me that I would go to the gym at 6 a.m. and be satisfied with 2 cookies. Like, there's absolutely no way.
You are listening to the KML Movement Podcast. Connect with me on Instagram at Kelsey Lensman. Hope you enjoyed today's episode and don't forget to share with a friend. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the KML Movement Podcast. My name is Kelsey Lensman, and today I am so excited to share someone that is so special to not only me, but our entire team here. And this is Carrie Drovdlic. She is a powerhouse of a woman in more than one ways. She's actually been a client with us for a little over maybe 2.5 years, way back in the day when I started to work in the gym. And now she's a part of our family again with Coach Navi. She is such an inspirational journey, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. She's a voice artist that brings the written word to life with her voice. Say that 10 times fast. Carrie has an amazing journey to better mental health through movement and confidence building, which we will talk more about today. Miss Carrie, how are ya?
I'm so good. Thank you. I will just have you follow me around and give me that intro everywhere I go. That was lovely. Thank you.
Little pump up, right? I love it.
Lovely.
I love it. For you, Carrie, it's funny. As I was even thinking back, I told you I was creeping on your Instagram today, way back to when we first started. And you even started way before then. And it's been cool for me to see an outside looking in your journey along the way and to see how much you've grown. But can you, Carrie, I know this is a vague question, but can you give a short summary of your journey and everything that you've walked through up until this point?
Yeah, the really short summary was I was a high achiever as a young person and just racking up accolades and awards and degrees and, feeling good about myself. And then, as we get older, we don't have all those opportunities necessarily to get that, the accolades and the recognition from outside. And then I stayed home for a while with my kids, and that is a thankless, non-recognized job, right? And I struggled because I didn't have I had never developed like an inner self-esteem or an inner confidence. All my confidence came from what have my accomplishments been and what kind of accolades am I getting from other people. And so I hit a low point around 2018, mentally, spiritually, physically. Even though I had been fit for a long time, I wasn't anymore for various reasons. My self-esteem was in a terrible place. And spiritually, I wasn't having a good journey, going to church, but not really feeling it, not really having any kind of relationship with God. And I had to dig myself out of that hole, which is really challenging to do. And I wrote all my notes down about it, so I'm sure we'll talk about it in detail. But basically, I had to figure out how to get out of that hole. And it took a long time, and it took me basically relearning how to do those kinds of things. I had never figured out how to have self-confidence. And I thought that it was like if I have awards and if I have these accomplishments, I'll have self-confidence. And I had to completely relearn what that was. I had to start moving my body again because I hadn't been. And as you know, mental health, physical health, spiritual health, it's all combined together. And I'm sure there are some people out there who have, good mental health without good physical and spiritual health, but they've got to be pretty rare because I think that they just all interlock together. And so I had to work on each one of those areas with a lot of teeny tiny little steps at a time. And finally, came out of the hole. It took a long time. And I do need to mention too that I don't feel like that I've arrived at the person that I thought that I would be. But it has occurred to me as I've come along that I don't think we ever actually arrive at that person. I think it's like the journey. And as Joyce Meyer says, who I love, she's a preacher, She says, I'm not yet where I want to be, but thank God I'm not where I used to be. And that's the place that I'm in now. But, it's hard to see your progress. Like it's only really recently within like the past maybe 6 months that I could really look back and go, wow, I really am a different person than I was. Yeah. And so that's the story in a nutshell, I guess.
No, I appreciate that, Carrie. And one thing that I've always admired from you is your ability to ask the question, why? Why am I responding this way? Why are my thought patterns this way? Instead of accepting it as fact and as truth and I'm never going to get better, you ask yourself the question why a lot. And you give yourself the ability then to not just reframe, but actually dig a little bit deeper and actually resolve some things or learn more things about yourself. So not that I want to bring us back to that dark moment, because I don't just want to bring us back there, but in that dark moment for you, Carrie, what was that first step, or how did you take a first step in the right direction?
Right. I have no problem talking about that. I think it's important because I think, as we've talked about before, I think that there is a perception out there of people who are perceived as having their stuff together. Well, they must be a different kind of person than me. Like they just must have something that I don't. And I absolutely do not believe that, because when I was in that the dark place, as I'll call it, my eating habits were terrible. I had bad eating habits my whole life. I'd never really learned how to eat properly, and that was a huge piece of it. It was pretty common for me to eat like a whole package of Oreos in a day. I mean, really, I could do it in one sitting if I really tried. That would not be a crazy thing. And I wanted to feel better, but I wanted to feel better now. And I knew how much work it was going to be, right? Because I had been in shape as a younger person. I'd never really been an athlete, but I had gone to the gym a lot. I had taught fitness classes. I knew what fitness was, and I knew that I wasn't there, and I knew how much work it was going to be to get from here to there. And sometimes just knowing how far I had to go was just enough to like make me just want to forget the whole thing. And you get into this place where it's this horrible cycle because you want to feel better right now. You have so much work to do. And so I'd eat some junk food because it would give me a little boost right now. It'll make me feel better in this moment, right? But then ultimately it would make me feel worse. I had bad sleeping habits, bad working out habits, bad eating habits. I would stay up. Now, part of this is because I had little kids at the time, and I think moms tend to do this. My kids would go to bed at 9, and I would stay up for like the next 4 or 5 hours because that was like the only time I had all day to myself. And what would I do in those 4 or 5 hours? I would eat, and I would eat everything in the house, which is of course like the worst time to eat, and it messes up your sleep. And so those were the physical things that I was doing to myself. But then mentally, when you put all of that together, I hated myself. Like I felt worthless. I felt like a complete failure. The voice in my head was just like, well, you're never going to get out of this. You're always going to feel like this. Might as well have another cookie. And sometimes I was so overwhelmed that I didn't even want to get started. And I was at this crossroads, and this is around the time that I met you. Yeah. And I look so fondly back at that time because I remember when you were just starting to do training, you were doing like classical training where you just had a client every hour, right? And I would have you like all to myself for 2 hours a week. Now, that would be so wonderful to have now. I miss those days so much. But anyways, I was at this crossroads, and I was getting older, and I have told you this part before, like I was at my son's event, and I was having trouble like getting up the stadium stairs to go sit in a seat, and I had never felt like that in my life before. Like I'd never been that out of shape. And I was like, well, you have to decide, like, are you just going to get older like all the old ladies that came before you and have trouble walking up steps, or are you going to fight this? Like, are you going to go gentle into that good night, or are you going to rage against the dying of the light? And I decided to go this direction, but it wasn't smooth sailing because my mindset was I've got to fix everything and I've got to fix it right now. Starting Monday, I'm going to fix everything, right? My eating habits are going to get better. I'm going to drink the water. I'm going to work out. I'm going to do everything and fix it. I'm a different person as of 2 days from now. And as you know, that absolutely doesn't work, right? And I would try and fail and try and fail. And then what did that do to me? Just made me feel like a bigger failure and more worthless. Mm-hmm. So that was a bit of a bummer. So I tried many, many, many times to just get myself completely together. And I tried to do it completely alone because I thought, I know what to do. Yep. I don't need any help. I mean, I was coming to you for training because I had the issues. I've got arthritis in my knee and I was having trouble with movement. And so I needed like some professional help in that respect. Yeah. But as far as like dieting and like mental health wise, I was like, I'm going to figure this out on my own. Yep. And part of that is like embarrassment because I didn't want people to know that I was like in this self-esteem hole because other than my husband, probably nobody really knew. Yeah. Because we can do such a good job of being functional on the outside, right? Yeah. And putting on a good face and, you know, putting on our Facebook face or our Instagram face and like, here's the fantastic thing that happened to me. But, you know, you're not showing how you're alone crying in your cookies at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, you're not going to show that part. Yeah. So I had to admit that I needed some help at some point. So I finally broke down and started going to a therapist. And I finally also broke down and started taking some medication. So I started taking Prozac, 10 milligrams a day, which is actually the tiniest little dose of Prozac. But my husband, who had worked in the mental health field for years, said I was so resistant to it, but he kept saying, you're not going to get reliant on it. All it's going to do is help you, just give you the push to get started. And if you do all of the work that you're supposed to do, that the therapist tells you to do, someday you can probably get off of it. And actually, I just went off of it like 7 weeks ago, and I'm doing fine. Yeah. But that's the point, though, is that so what I did with him is I started a meditation practice. I started keeping a notebook of distorted thoughts. I started a gratitude practice, and, you know, obviously going to him weekly. So I started all of those things, very tiny little things. So my gratitude practice is I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for every day. Mm-hmm. And at first, I thought, I have to tell you, too, like, everything he told me to do, at first I was like, that is never going to work. Like, well, that is useless. Like, what help is that going to be? Like, and again, because I wanted to feel better now, and I had no patience. I thought I could just go to the therapist and he would say the right thing and poof, I'd be better. And it'd be like, yay, I'm better. But that doesn't happen. It's the same thing with the physical. Yeah. You know, meditation, I so sincerely believe in it now, but it's like exercise for the mind. Like, you can't go to the gym once and you're fit, right? And the same thing with meditation. You do it one time and it feels almost worthless, but you do it 5 minutes a day for a year and your brain will be different. Yeah. And the whole point of meditation, I think, and why I'm so passionate about it, is that it is exercise for the mind. So if your thoughts are running away with you because of anxiety, because of depression, whatever, you've got to get control over those thoughts or they will control you. And so meditation is simply a time to exercise your mind to focus on exactly what you want to focus on and nothing else. It's not a time to make your mind go blank. Nobody can do that. You're just you're teaching your mind to focus. And then that way, when your thoughts start to run away with you, you've got a little more muscle in your brain to hold on to them and not let them run away with you. Yeah. So that was, again, this was a lesson of learning that it's going to be a little thing, tiny little steps. The other piece of this where you came in and where the movement comes in is that you introduced me to the idea that learning a new motor skill increases your neuroplasticity. And so you remember, we just talked about this the other day, how when I very first started with you, I also have the vertigo too. So you had me do things like stand on one foot and then like you would throw a ball to different places and I would have to catch it because this is like a new motor thing to do. Then, you know, how often does a 45-year-old lady do that? Not very often. And I started playing the guitar One, because I wanted to learn how to play the guitar, and two, because I had read that like just learning this new motor skill, it lets your brain become more receptive to new thought patterns. And so, as you know, your thought patterns, if your thought pattern is, I suck and I'm worthless, that will essentially create a groove in your brain where that thought pattern just goes every time. And to make a new thought pattern of, I'm not worthless, I'm worthy, you have to make your brain receptive to that. And so through movement, even just learning, I think, and you can back me up on this or not if I'm wrong, that even just learning like proper form for your deadlifts and that kind of thing is learning a new motor pattern. And like how you always talk about like the mind body connection, and even making yourself like activate your glutes by just like thinking about it. I think all of that plays into it and helps your brain become more more neuroplastic, but more squishy.
Yeah.
And more receptive.
I mean, man, Carrie, you hit on so much that I want to dig into, but initially,
I
love it. I want to talk about all of it, but I just want to skip to that last part because I think this is so important. Is I heard this from somebody, it's not my term, so I can't coin it, but as your body moves, your brain grooves. And this is exactly what you're talking about, Carrie. And one thing that you pulled out is your thought patterns, right? It's not who you are, that you have a negative thought, that it's who you are. It's a pattern that you're running. And as you move your body and as you focus on different things, you're literally creating new grooves in your brain, and you're more receptive to those different thought patterns. And there's actually a woman, I can't remember her name, but she's a scientist, and she created strength training, but I also think it had something to do with dance. And she would say words of affirmation out in this class that everybody would repeat while their body's moving. And her reasoning for that is as their body moves, their brain grooves. So those positive affirmations actually hit a little bit deeper because they're forming new grooves in their brain. So I thought that was fascinating, right? But as you talked about that last piece, I know a big part has been your mental health journey along with your physical health. And you said initially that the physical, the spiritual, the mental, they all go together. So in that mental health journey, I appreciate you just being so open and honest about your journey and everything alongside of that. What has truly helped you through those negative thought patterns to be able to notice them and then also reframe them when you need to?
Right. That's really good, because the biggest thing for me, there's my mental health issues tend to the OCD side. And so there's this cognitive behavioral therapy is this wonderful thing. And I'll give you the example that I found online of how you do it. So let's say you go into a grocery store and you see somebody that you know, and you say hi to that person, and that person kind of just quickly says, "Oh, hi," and then walks off. Well, you have two interpretations of this. One interpretation is, "Oh, she must be really busy. She needs to run off." The second interpretation is, "Oh, she must be mad at me. I must have done something wrong." Right? You actually don't have any evidence as to which one is correct, so you actually get to choose which one of these is correct. And so the idea is that you teach yourself to choose the positive one of, "Oh, she must be in a hurry. She must need to go cook dinner," or whatever. So I had to keep a notebook, and it would be, I would write down the event. Like for me, a lot of times it was like, my kid is sick. And then I would have to put the rational belief is he probably has a cold and he's going to be fine. The irrational belief is this is meningitis and we're going to end up in the hospital later this week and I need to worry about this every minute of the day, right? So, and again, he's just got some sniffles or whatever it is. So without any more information, you don't know which one is right, and you can choose. So and I have a very large notebook filled with these that I kept for probably 6 or 8 months. Yeah. But then after a while, it's nice because once you get into and again, it seems like this will do nothing. It seems like doing that would do absolutely nothing. But after you do it for a while, you start to far more quickly recognize your irrational thoughts. Mm-hmm. and far more quickly silence them and pick the rational thought. And I wish I could tell you that those irrational thoughts never pop up anymore, but they do. The, Again, this is why I say it's not a destination, it's a journey. But you get better at recognizing them, and you get better at silencing them. Just like I was just writing a blog today about like trying to get out of bed to go to the gym, and you talk about this too, how you never really get to the point that you're like, let's go to the gym, like at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. or 4 a.m, whenever you go. God bless you. So, you don't, motivation is not the key. It's discipline that's the key. And the voice is always going to come in and say, but your bed is warm and it's cold outside and we can work out later today and you don't have to get up. And you have to, again, be able to silence that voice. And I silence that voice with my little don't think, just move mantra. That's how I do it. But anything works. As a matter of fact, something that I think works really well in that situation is Mel Robbins' 5-second rule. That's a really good book for that. Yeah. It's just a mechanism to shut down the voice in your brain and move your body and get going. And again, I wish I could say that voice goes away. It never goes away, but it gets weaker, and your ability to quash it gets stronger.
It is so amazing being on this side of the screen, Carrie. And I remember that woman 2 years ago that did not have these same
really different
thought. Like it's completely two different people. You're the same person inside, but how you view life and how you go about it, it's night and day for me. So it's really cool. I'm going to be selfish. It's really cool to see that. Go ahead.
It is weird on my end of it too, actually, because like even things like I used to think, oh, I would like to be one of those people who read, self-help books, but I never read self-help books. Part of it was because like I was a little bit like, I know what to do. Like I know what it's going to say, and I only read fiction and I watched a lot of TV. In the past couple of weeks, I've realized that I really have very little interest in fiction all of a sudden. Like, all I want to do is read, like, Battlefield of the Mind and You Are a Badass and Atomic Habits. Like, it's all I want to do is read stuff like that all of a sudden. And this was I wanted to mention this too, this Battlefield of the Mind. This was the first book that I read in starting the whole journey. And it's so dog-eared and all that stuff because I still go back to it all the time because this is what really helped me. Now, this, of course, is a Christian book. It comes from a Christian point of view. That's not going to be the thing for all of your listeners, of course. But the ideas in it are universal. And the idea is that your thoughts control your beliefs control your actions, and your actions control who you become. And so you have to get control of your thoughts before you're going to be able to do anything else. And she talks about it as there's a battle in your mind between essentially God and the devil for your thoughts, but you can think of it as between positive and negative. It's the same idea, and we all have this battle in our minds. So there's some really fantastic things in here that are very inspiring, like that God begins a good work in you and he will see it through to the end. And so I kept kind of saying that to myself, like once I took the first step on the journey, I was like, okay, God has begun a good work in me. He's going to see it through to the end. And so, for me, and I know it's not for everybody, but for me, having the divine power to rely on, knowing that he's on my side and that he, Jesus didn't come so that we could suffer and have terrible lives. Jesus says, I came so that you might have an abundant life and enjoy it. That's what he wants for us. And so knowing that, the higher power is on your side is always very helpful.
I think that's incredibly powerful because I don't know about you and your journey, but for me and my journey, I needed to believe in something bigger than just myself for me to actually go towards the right path. I needed to believe in that. And I want to hit still on this vein, but hit it from a different angle. How was that, Carrie, from thought patterns, from your history, how has that played into your nutritional journey for you? How has that been previously, but now?
Right. That's been the last thing to fall into place because I really, really had essentially 49 years of terrible eating habits.
Yeah.
To back me up. And I mean, my eating was really disorganized for a while. There was a long period of time where I would not eat in front of other people. So like I would make family dinner for the family and I would sit down and I would kind of move my food around the plate. But then I wouldn't eat until like everybody had gone to bed, and then I would eat everything in the kitchen, standing up, by the way. And so, and again, I should mention, because I haven't, every single thing that I've put into place, I did not put into place all at once. I put in place one tiny little thing at a time. So like mental health, today I'm going to meditate for 3 minutes. For my physical health, I'm going to drink 1 extra glass of water today. So like, I think that's, and maybe I should have mentioned it already, because it is probably the most important thing that I learned, is that you can't do it all at once. You just have to pick one tiny little thing. And once you've got that tiny little thing down and kind of second nature, then you add the next tiny little thing, which is why it takes 2 years to get from like point A to point B, but it is so worth the journey. And it seems so far. And so the idea then that I put into place, I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I'll get back. Was that instead of thinking like my goal is to lose weight or my goal is to improve my eating habits, instead my goal is to eat a vegetable today. That's the only goal I'm going to think about. That's what I'm going to focus on. And then I would do that, and then I would, check it off as a win and consider that a success. Now, I couldn't do that at first because you kept telling me, just get some protein in, and I'm like, that's not enough. I need so much more than that. It's not even worth it. It's not even worth putting effort into, because I have to change everything. It took me so long to set down this idea that I have to change everything all at once and just change one little tiny thing at a time. That was really important. Okay, now back to your point, which was?
From the same thing. So from the nutrition side.
So the nutrition.
Yep, go for it.
Okay, so again, Navi had me start doing tiny little things like sit down to eat rather than standing up, because that was a big problem that I would just graze around the kitchen while I was cleaning up the kitchen, and I would eat and blah blah. So sit down to eat and put it on a plate. So I literally just started with sit down to eat and put it on a plate. And then, like you said, add in let's focus on the protein. Not even worry about calories yet. Let's just focus on protein. And for me, I have found too that really the linchpin for all of it is water. When I don't get enough water, everything falls out of place. My workouts are terrible because I don't feel great. I don't sleep well. Mentally, I don't do well because you get foggy. Like I have found that water is the linchpin to everything. So yes, to tiny little habit and tiny little habit. And now for the last 5 weeks is the most consistent that I've ever been with calories and protein. I did a pretty good stretch last year. I lost like 18 pounds last year.
Yeah.
But then I gained some of it back over the holidays, and now I'm on the way back down again. But, it's funny because when I first started, that would have been like my headline. I lost 18 pounds. It's literally like a side note now, because of everything that I've gained is so much more important to me than the weight that I lost. Also, I gained strength at the same time as losing weight, which is, that's the goal in the whole thing. So I think because my eating habits had been so bad for so long, that's why they've been kind of the last to come in line. But I do feel like I have more control over them than I've ever had before. I think it's really important to say I haven't arrived, and I'm not perfect, and I have bad days, and I have days where I eat too many cookies, but those are far fewer than they used to be. And I can get back on track a lot faster than I used to be able to. Before, oh gosh, if I would have fallen off the wagon for a day, I would have just been like, well, this week's done for. Let's just eat pizza, and it would have taken me. And then once you do that, then the self-esteem spiral starts to go down again. And so then you just want junk food to feel better. So it's quite a ride. And I'm not saying that I won't take that ride again. I might. But I feel now like I can pull myself back up and get back on track a lot faster now.
Yeah. And you've, not that you didn't know how to before, but you have guardrails and you can see yourself, ooh, I'm going in this direction. Okay, instead of me get to that rock bottom, okay, how can I get back on that direction there? And I want to pull up a quote that I heard today that it is in alignment with so much of what you said. And he said, the purpose of the goal isn't to get to the goal. The purpose of the goal is who you become in order to achieve it. And you said that right there in what you said. You said, yes, you have a goal, you have a target, right? But who you've become, Carrie, in that process is everything that you are today. And it's the skills and what you've gained versus what you've just lost. And a lot of people, I don't know about you, but I know myself, I know a lot of people come in and they're like, well, I just want to lose X, or I want to stop X habit. And what you don't realize is when you switch that to, hey, what am I gaining? And for you, it was, can I eat a vegetable today? Not, can I not have sweets? Can I eat a vegetable today? And when you switch your focus on what I can do versus what I can't do, that's when it gets really, really good. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I also learned through you and Navi to not look at food as good food and bad food, but just look at it as food. And, you know, even when I lost the 18 pounds, I was having a couple of cookies several days a week just because I worked it out like with my numbers that I could, and that kept me sane. And I've been using something that Leah says, and this is another one of those things that when I heard her say it, I was like, that is so stupid, and that will absolutely never work. And of course it totally does. She talked about, I recognized when she said that I approached like sweets and cookies and that kind of stuff with a scarcity mindset. So I typically wouldn't buy it at home because I know that I'm going to hoover right through it. So I would go to like a meeting at church and they'd have cookies. And the whole time I'd be like, well, you can't have a cookie. Don't have a cookie. You shouldn't have any of those because those cookies are bad for you. And so I'm just thinking about cookies the whole dang time. And then I'm like, well, I shouldn't have a cookie because I don't have a cookie at home. You know what I mean? So it's like a whole thing. So I did this the other day and I was like, I can't believe that worked. So I went to a church meeting and there were cookies. I feel stupid even saying it, but this is what Leah said to do. So I said something along the lines of, there's plenty of cookies in the world, and I can have one of those cookies if I want, but it's not aligned with my goals right now, so I'm going to choose not to. And I'm not going to say that like 100% worked, but I'm saying it 85% worked, and it was enough for me to pass on the cookie. Because I had already, and I could say to myself, you had cookies last night, remember? That did work into my macros, like I had worked those in, and you're going to probably have cookies again tomorrow, so it's no problem. There's cookie, and I go to the convenience store, and there's the candy aisle, and like, there's plenty of candy in the world, and I don't have to buy this candy just because I'm here. I can have candy anytime I want. So I just keep saying those things to myself, and they're working.
Yeah. It might sound silly to you, Carrie. That is the number one thing that got me through a really hard period from transitioning from macros. Because for me, it was, for me, I would clean my plate. Because if it was in my macros, that mean I had to have every little ounce of it, especially when I was competing. I needed to have all of that. So for me, a big part of it was even being able to leave food on a plate as I transitioned away from it, because I thought in my brain I had to have all of it. And it was a very scarcity-based place that I was coming from. So I literally had to say this to myself every single time I ate as I was transitioning of, this will be here tomorrow. This will be here later. You can have, food is abundant. Like, you can have this tomorrow. You can have this later. That little phrase, along with the cookie example, it allowed me to stop thinking of it as this big red button of I either need to push it now or I can never push it in my entire life. And when you realize food is there and it will be there tomorrow, thank God that we have the ability to have food be there, because that's not everybody.
Amen.
So food is there. It will be there tomorrow. It will be there next week. For me, I had to repeat that probably 500 times throughout a week in my head just for me to realize it's not all or nothing. I can keep this on the plate and it will be there tomorrow. So that's such a good, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is not tiny. That is so important. So important.
And I had never considered that, because I'm not at that stage yet, because I'm still counting macros, and I'd never even considered that piece of it. But you're right, because I do that all the time. Like my daughter will be like, "Can I have a bite?" I'm like, "No," because I measured it out already. Go get yours. I have to eat everything that's on this plate right now. So that's interesting. That'll be another challenging mindset to work through when I get to that point.
But you have the foundation. The biggest thing is you have that foundation now. And so
right.
And you'll transition out of it. And you've had periods where we probably didn't count macros, but that'll be a huge thing of like, it'll be here. I can leave it. It'll be here. I'm good. So I want to switch direction just a little bit. And you wrote an article on LinkedIn and you talked about how powerlifting and strength training really allowed you and helped you be a better voice artist. And I want to quote you on something that you said. You said here that I wrote it down, Carrie. So you said, we have such beliefs in every area of our lives. In fact, we create a circular wall of them that we tend to live in. And many will live behind this wall their entire life. That was so powerful. Yeah. Can you explain what you mean by that and then how that impacted different areas?
Yeah, so I think that all of this comes from confidence, which I didn't have. Mm-hmm. And again, I thought confidence had to come from winning awards and stuff. But I found out that confidence comes from keeping promises to yourself. And those can be little promises. I heard somebody say, and I wish I remembered the dude who said it last week. I hardly ever listen to podcasts, sorry. But I heard a guy in a podcast say that every time we keep a promise to ourselves, we are teaching ourselves that we are someone we can trust, which I think was so powerful. And I hadn't really thought about it that way. But, you know, if you had a friend who constantly made plans with you and then constantly canceled, you would come to think that friend is totally unreliable. And why would you treat yourself that way, right? So keeping these little promises to myself has increased my confidence in myself. And it's teaching me that I'm somebody that I can trust, that I'm somebody who is capable. And it is crazy to say these words out loud because there was a time that I believed none of this, none of it. Yeah. And so then, you've got me lifting weights, and I really did think I had a very deeply ingrained belief that I'm not a strong person. Like, I'm like, you're not an athlete, Carrie, and, you never played sports, and I've done resistance training, with little weights, but I've never really tried to lift heavy. I'm sure I can't because, I'm just not that kind of person. Right. And so I thought the idea that I could ever pick up more than 100 pounds is nutso. And then I did the lifting meet. And so then I benched, I think it was 115 at that meet. This was the first one, and 200 pounds. And then I ended up doing over 200 pounds, which was, 205, but it still counts. And so those were far more than I thought I could do. And I had a moment. So I was at 614 barbell and right after the meet, and I went and I sat in my car and I thought, I just did something I didn't think that I could do. And then I was like, how many other things are out there that I don't think that I can do that I actually can? Not physically, but I mean anything that I'm thinking that I can't do. And so the confidence that this gave me, I started to jump into things without really being sure about doing them. So for example, there's I like to do video game character voices as part of my job. It's one of my favorite things. And, as a freelancer, you're always looking for work. And anytime that you can get yourself in front of people who do gaming and hire voice actors is a good idea. And there's this gaming conference coming up in June, and there was an application to be a speaker. And to be a speaker at a place like that, of course, is, that gives you some credibility. And I was like, I don't know if I could. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. And if they pick me, I've never been able to do this before, but I thought if they pick me, I'll figure it out. And I would not have been able to do that before. You know what I mean? I just was like, I'll figure it out. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'll figure it out. And because the other thing that I've learned is if you don't give yourself any kind of endpoint, if you don't give yourself a deadline, then you just won't do it. Mm-mm. So you kind of have to force yourself a little bit. And I could give you some more examples. I don't want to bore everybody, but there's been other things like that where I kind of was like, okay, and said yes. And then I thought, I don't really know how to do this, but I'll figure it out. Yeah. So that's what it's done for me.
That's incredible. And that reminds me, there's this book, I haven't read it yet, but it's the quote that I believe in full-heartedly, is that everything is figure outable. It's not even a word, but things are figure outable. It's just, are you willing to step a little bit outside of that comfort zone to be able to see, oh, I might be capable of that. Or, hey, for Carrie, for you, and this was for me, if I can do that I never thought that I could do, what else can I do? And it puts a little chip in that belief pattern of, well, I can never do that.
Absolutely.
And if you put, I'm a very visual person. If it's a wall, and if I chip it once, it's not really broken down yet. If I chip it again, okay, it's a little bit more. If I keep on chipping that thing, eventually it's not going to be there. And it's the question of, are you willing to put yourself in front of that wall with that hammer? And are you willing to hit that wall once? And if you're willing to hit that wall once, I bet you're going to be able to hit that wall again, which is awesome. Yeah. It's cool to see, Carrie. It's really cool to see. So
things that I found that have been helpful too, again, with the reading, because I didn't used to read, but now I do. So you always give everybody this "You Are a Badass" book, right? And she talks a lot about this kind of very thing, right? That there is an abundant life out there for you, waiting for you. But you just have to believe in it and go get it. And the other one that you told me about was the upper limit problem.
Yes.
And that was kind of interesting too, because I have noticed myself, because that's the whole idea, that there's a cap and we feel that we can't go past that cap in our abilities. Yep. And every time we get close, we self-sabotage, and so recognizing that helps you, again, break through that. The other thing that I did last year that I started doing audiobooks. Audiobooks is kind of the marathon of voiceover work. Like a commercial is 30 seconds, an audiobook is 22 hours. It's a lot of work. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I could ever do an audiobook. And I was like, I'll just figure it out. So, yeah. And then I did 8 audiobooks last year.
Oh, so, casual. So for that, for that woman that is listening to this, Carrie, and they're like, Carrie, I'm hearing you. It's so awesome for you that you're able to get to this place in your journey, but I am that previous version of Carrie where I'm stuck. I want to take a step. It feels so overwhelming. I feel like I have so much I have to do. I've tried the things. It hasn't worked. What would be 1 or 2 things you would tell them, Carrie?
Wow, that's such a good question. Because I didn't start the journey knowing all of this. Yeah. And so I don't know that it's fair to look back, with that perspective necessarily. Something that helped for me was I saw this thing somewhere that said, a year from now, you'll wish you started today. Right? Started with anything. Just even started, putting more vegetables in or whatever it is. So there was that I didn't want another year to go by and feel the same way. I was tired of feeling like that. I was really tired of feeling like that. I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And I believed that it was possible to feel better. I think also you need to have help. I don't think that you can do it alone. I sure couldn't. And 1, I started going to therapy, of course. But then 2, you started KML Movement. So instead of just one-on-one with you in the gym, now all of a sudden there's this network of people. And not just the network of like you and Navi and Leah and Trish, but also the network of peers. So all of a sudden we're having calls. And here's a whole bunch of people who feel exactly like I do and who are on exactly the same journey that I am. And here's all these people that are rooting for me. Yeah. And oh my gosh, you can't keep up a negative mindset when you've got Navi sending you a video every Monday. I mean, it's impossible. She's like the sunshine of my Monday. So, when you've got people like holding you up, and I think also the third thing I would say, so, 1 is you just have to start somewhere. You just have to get started with something. 2 is surround yourself with people who are going to lift you up and help you. And 3, I'm not kidding, but these books that I've mentioned, so Atomic Habits and You Are a Badass, and if you're really struggling mentally and spiritually, Battlefield of the Mind, I think they're life-changing. I think that if you can put in place the things that they talk about, one tiny little step at a time, you can change the way that you look at the world. And interestingly too is that for me, my goal, my end goal has changed along the way. Like I don't see myself as ever arriving exactly, but I just see myself as like let's face the next challenge. Let's see like what the next thing is.
Yeah, man. And we'll, guys, for those that are listening, we'll put all of the links to those books in the show notes. So if you're like, hey, what'd she say, or what's that book? Go ahead, go to the show notes, and we'll link them up. And Carrie, I could probably talk to you for another hour, but I don't want to keep you longer than what you need to here. But going on, next step, right? And you said you don't envision yourself getting there, right? And I believe in that so deeply. There's not this moment where you're on this mountaintop that you're like, oh, all my hopes and dreams are here. Everything's rainbows and sunshine, and I just have arrived, right?
It's all downhill from here.
I've arrived. But it's this, I can feel it in how you're communicating it. It's this excitement for, ooh, what's that next little thing? Or hey, what's that next little thing? And there's this excitement about, I almost envision as like unpeeling the onion. Ooh, what's this other thing about me that I didn't know? Ooh, what's this other capability about me? So I'm curious, this is just for more me than anything. What is that, not future for you look like, but what is that next step for you? What are you really excited to uncover about yourself going forward?
Okay, well, this is very pragmatic and specific, but again, since I told you that like the nutrition piece was the last piece to come together for me, I've got a very tenuous hold on it. So when I tried to reverse diet out of a cut last year, I had always for my whole life had this black and white thinking. I'm either dieting or I'm eating everything on the planet, right? And so as soon as I was done cutting, I was like, I'm eating everything on the planet. And that's how I gained back like 10 pounds in December, right? So I did not do a good job of reverse dieting. And so Navi and I have talked about it, and starting in June, I'll be reverse dieting again. And so that is the challenge. But that's the challenge. That's the most important one, because that's like the challenge for the rest of my life, right? You can't cut for the rest of your life. So I have to learn how to eat at a maintenance phase, and also at some point, just like you're doing, eat intuitively without counting macros, which is going to be a real challenge for me, because like I said, it's my mindset, I haven't been successful with it up to this point. I feel though, like I feel far more confident in my ability to do that now than I did last September when I tried it the last time. So that's the very pragmatic thing that I have to that I have to face next.
Oh, I'm excited for you. That is one of the most challenging things, and I could go on a rabbit hole, but I'll pause myself on. And
okay,
Carrie, I imagine, I have no doubt that come June, comes July, September, a year from now, you are going to be amazed at those little things that will add up, where it's not that there's not going to be challenges, because that's life, but you're going to be amazed about how much further you've come mentally and physically at that point. And I think you'll realize maybe in December, it wasn't rainbows and sunshine, but I think you're going to realize how much different you're operating right now and in the future. And that I'm just excited for you there. So Carrie, first of all, thank you for taking time for this. This is not going to be the only one with Carrie, because her and I could dive off many rabbit holes, and we will in the future. So first, thank you so much for taking time on this. And I know so many people got value from many different angles here.
Well, it's my pleasure, because as I've told you before, like when people are like, oh, like you look great, what are you doing? It's literally like 45 minutes later when I stop talking. So, and by then they've glazed over and they're not interested anymore. So this was a chance for me to like get it all out at once. And now I can just direct them to this podcast. And I don't have to write an essay about it to everyone I meet.
That's incredible.
Here. I just get really excited because I'm absolutely 100% positive that if I can do this, that literally anyone can. Literally anyone. Because I love cookies and I love sleeping in. And yet I'm able to like manage all of that now. And I would have, you could have never convinced me that I would go to the gym at 6 a.m. and be satisfied with 2 cookies. Like, there's absolutely no way. I would have laughed in your face. So I know that it's possible for anybody to do it.
And that's what's so powerful. In my opinion, it's everybody's story is able to be powerful for some other person to be like, oh, Carrie, I hit home with that. Like, that connects with me. If she can do it, maybe I can do it. And so, Carrie, I first want to say
Absolutely.
Thank you for you continuing your journey, because if you wouldn't, not only would you not be here right now talking with me about this, you wouldn't be the person with the broken down and build up beliefs that you have, and your open-mindedness of, oh, what else can I do? So thank you for not only me, but for that one person. It might be 20, it might be 1,000, but that one person that's listening to this that thought, oh, that's me. Oh yeah, that hit home. Oh, that's me. And if that's you listening to this, I want you to say, take one step, not 20, not a foot, take one step. Like Carrie said, it was adding one vegetable in. It was moving 10 minutes, right? And allow that to be your first step. So everybody, thank you so much for listening in. I appreciate you. I know that you got value from this. And Carrie, real quick, where can people find you at if they're like, oh, I want to talk to Carrie or message her about this? Where can people find you at in social?
I'm Carrie M. Drovdlic on Instagram and Carrie Drovdlic on Facebook.
Love it.
So that's where they can find me.
Beautiful. So guys, thank you so much for taking time. And like I always say, take one step. Like Carrie says, take one step and you'll be amazed from a year from now where that one step might lead you. So thanks again and have an awesome week.